Yeah. Okay. So, so thank you for agreeing to talk to me more, even after our very long interview we already did just before the workshop. So if you're watching this online, this is a few days after the workshop, and we didn't find during the workshop. So Riley has graciously agreed to spend more time with my questions, and so we're continuing this interview online. So in the first part, we got to the point where we talked a bit about your first teacher, Sakai Chikuho II, and you explained that he was in the Muan or Meian tradition of traditional Honkyoku. And a while ago, I think we mentioned this in the first part of the interview as well. Mateusz Ferreira, I think is the way he's pronounced. He did a fantastic interview series on Yokoyama sensei and the legacy. And I really like this approach because he asked questions about the artist, but also about the person. If for the viewers who've not seen that video series, it's highly recommended if you're interested in Yokoyama sensei and his legacy. But I was wondering if you, so of course we don't have that much time, but I was wondering if we could, if I could ask questions in a similar vein about your first teacher, about Chikuho. So maybe ask in this way. So from an artistic point of view, in contrast to the Yokoyama way of playing Honkyoku or approaching Honkyoku, where do you see any major differences in the way your first teacher played in Chikuho?
Yes, big difference. Chikuho was, you could say, more traditional, a shakuhachi player, or came from a more traditional sort of background than Yokoyama. For a start, Yokoyama had several teachers. I mean, right there, that's not traditional. He had his father, he had Watatsumi, which is a different lineage entirely, and he had Fukuro Rando. Mm-hmm. Secondly, he performed in, listened to an environment very different from Chikuho's. Yokoyama's was in Tokyo, and it was he listened to a lot of Western music. He was influenced by that. He was, in a sense, more of a so-called international musician.
Yes.
Sakai Chikuho learned from his father. Mm-hmm. He only had his father's lineage. He continued his father's lineage. Mm-hmm. There was other influences. Other influences came in, certainly. And perhaps when he was younger, he may have learned a few pieces from people that his father might have known or that he asked mm-hmm. to teach his son, the father. Mm-hmm. But it was all still contained within that system or that lineage.
Okay.
It was not in Tokyo. It was in the Kansai area, mm-hmm. Osaka, Kyoto area, where the Myoan tradition of shakuhachi playing is even today located primarily. It's everywhere, but primarily there. And not only did Chikuho come from, a more sort of rigid or pure lineage in that sense, mm-hmm. Not pure meaning better, but pure meaning less,
more exclusive,
other influences.
Yeah.
But that lineage from which he came, that is the Myoan lineage, one could argue is more conservative than even the Kinko lineage mm-hmm. of Yokoyama's father. Mm-hmm. So those were the two main things. And then you could hear this in the way that, for example, Sakai Chikuho thought about or talked about or played pitches. Mm-hmm. His idea of what the right pitch should be.
Yeah, we talked about
quite different
that.
from Yokoyama's. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Chikuho was very different from many of his fellow teachers in that more conservative sort of traditional Japanese shakuhachi music tradition, in that he was very open to new things. He didn't know that many new things. He didn't have the opportunity or perhaps the inclination to seek out or experience new things to the degree that Yokoyama did. But he was still open to them. Mm-hmm. And for example, he collaborated with this composer, Moroi Makoto, so Mr. Moroi, in creating what many people considered one of the first, if not the first, truly modern shakuhachi piece composed by a non-shakuhachi player.
Okay.
So-called Gendai ongaku as opposed to shinkyoku. So it's not just new, but shakuhachi players are still, or koto players, or people within that hogaku or traditional Japanese music scene were composing, like Miyagi Michio, for example. Mm-hmm. But someone that didn't know zip about shakuhachi. Mr. Moroi didn't know that much. Yes. Mr. Moroi, or Moroi Makoto, being the composer, he got the credit for composing the piece. In my opinion, it was really co-composed.
Okay.
I do know, and it had, this is documented, that the way that the piece was composed is that basically Moroi and Sakai, Chikuho II, my teacher, the two of them just holed up in some temple in Kyoto for a week or so and thrashed out the bits. Mm-hmm. This works, that works, do this, do that.
Okay.
And interestingly, and so it kind of just evolved while there on the spot. Interesting, and in collaboration with this, the very first score for this modern shakuhachi piece, even though by definition it was composed by a non-shakuhachi player, the score was in shakuhachi notation. It was in the Chikuho notation. Mm-hmm. Then it was recorded. Then an ethnomusicologist, Tsukitani, transcribed it. She transcribed it into staff notation. Okay. And I'm not sure if later on at the same time it was also transcribed into another lineage, Kozan notation.
Okay.
But the original was in the Chikuho notation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the staff notation, which of course I can read, is different from the way, marginally minor, but the details are important, different from the way Chikuho played it, and even from the way that the Chikuho notation notates it. It has to be, almost by definition in many ways, or in many instances.
Yes.
So that's, if he was totally 100%, if Chikuho was so traditional, as many of his contemporaries, he wouldn't have even done that. So that is an example. Another example is he was very open, for example, for his students to go and learn from someone else.
Oh, okay.
He didn't have any qualms about letting that happen. And I think personally, in large part, that's because he was very comfortable with his own playing, his own standing, his own level of playing. Yeah, you want to play with someone, you want to learn with someone else, that's fine. It doesn't look bad on me. You're lost if you don't come back, sort of thing. I think that was more of the case with him than with some other teachers.
Okay. But apart from that, it was more the traditional Japanese iemoto system, so where you had the head guy, so to speak, and everybody was dependent on him.
The organization was 100% traditional, yes.
Okay, interesting. So
the teaching too. The teaching was largely traditional. Mm-hmm. He would, he'd play something, you'd listen, we'd play it together.
Yeah.
He could hear you, so forth. So that was also traditional.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Was one of my next questions anyway about the teaching style. So, Yokoyama Sensei, from what I've heard, his teaching style was still very traditional Japanese, even though he is considered. I've never met him, unfortunately. What I've heard, he's considered of having had quite modern views on many things, or more modern views than was typical for the shakuhachi world. But so in teaching style, I, I sometimes like to see it as Japanese way. So just giving it a brief headline: Japanese style is imitation, Western style is explanation, right? So in the West, we like to talk about it and to understand, and in Japan, it's copying, so to speak. Okay. A bit more broadly, asking maybe, so in terms of your teachers, I'm assuming they were quite firmly rooted in this Japanese way of teaching. Can you talk a bit about that, and also what you took from that and how you made your own style? Because you come from a different background, obviously, and I've experienced your teaching, and it's not the traditional Japanese way. So maybe you can talk a bit about this topic.
Yep. My own experience, and I can also, having sat in on other lessons as well. So it's more than my own learning experience, but my experience with being students from both. In my opinion, they were very similar. There wasn't any different. It was both the imitation method. Mm-hmm. This is how it goes. Play it. Nope, wasn't right. Listen, play it again. Okay. Figure out what's different, mm-hmm. and so forth. Perhaps the biggest difference was that Sakai Chikuho didn't require us to memorize the pieces, and I have a theory about that too, because there's. Sakai Chikuho had, the Chikuho lineage has, or at least when I was there, over 80 honkyoku. And in my opinion, that's very difficult to maintain in one's memory in one go. Mm-hmm. This is, again, just my own theory. There are only 33 or 36 honkyoku in the Kinko tradition, depending on how you count them. Mm-hmm. Yokoyama mainly taught only 23 or 4, maybe, give or take some. Yeah. And I think around 30 is the maximum you can hold in your head. Any more, it becomes like, you put in more water into the jar, something comes out. Right. So you learn another piece, you'll forget something else. Mm-hmm. And so that's my theory, mm-hmm. why Chikuho didn't require memorizing every single honkyoku like Yokoyama did. Yes. I don't think it's possible to memorize all 80, but I think it's better to memorize pieces. So, mm-hmm. Again, I'm torn between the two. Yes. You can't have both. Mm-hmm. No, maybe you could, but it's difficult. And of course, even with Chikuho, one eventually memorized pieces because you just played them so often, just by playing them. That's the biggest difference that I can remember. Okay. Now, in terms of your second question, how I have adapted, having now taught since the late 70s, so 80, 90, 30, 40, nearly 50 years. If I could do it, I'd do it again. I'd do it, and I'd probably do it differently. Mm. I probably do explain too much. That's my own assessment of when I'm having taught somebody. Mm-hmm. I try to have the student understand that imitating is, at that point, is the best. Mm-hmm. And I hope that my explanations are only helping the student to understand what they're trying to imitate and how to imitate it more quickly, rather than doing it intuitively. But maybe that's not the case. I have also theories about the imitative method and the method that both Chikuho and Yokoyama used. I think that in traditional Japanese music, it's not that important that the teacher tries to encourage every student to reach his or her potential. Okay. That's a very Western thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, your potential may be better than my potential. This student might have a better, higher potential or greater potential than that student. Mm-hmm. But let's try to get all of us to reach our own potential. That's the goal in the West. Yes. And again, this is total generalization, a real generalization, and it's only my own theory generalizing.
Yes.
In much of Asian traditions, not just the shakuhachi tradition, but basically in East Asia, the goal is, that's not that. It's more group-centered. So reaching our own individual potential is very individualistic.
Yes.
The goal of the teacher is to continue this tradition for the group. It's so that the group continues, the tradition continues. And you don't need everybody to reach their full attention for that to happen. You need the ones that have the highest potential, the ones that in a sense would get it anyway. You don't have to explain it.
Okay.
If you have to explain it, they're not going to be those ones that will continue the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't try to work on people one way or the other. Like, this is it. If here it is.
Yeah.
You're going to get it or not. I'm not going to try to help you get it, faster.
Yeah.
If you show potential, if you have that own motivation, your own self-motivation, if you're going to reach your own potential regardless of the obstacles or the advantages that a teacher might give you, the teacher will recognize that and spend more time with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, okay, here it is. I'm a very passive sort of displaying the wares,
mm-hmm.
as it were.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's like sowing the seeds. You were just going to sow the whole field, and the plants that really grow well, we'll nurture them. The plants that are kind of, if I weeded this plant, maybe it would grow more. If I fertilize that plant.
Yeah.
No. The ones that just are going to grow on their own, right? We're going to give them even more attention. That is, I think, the way it works. And that's possibly how the tradition continues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that metaphor of just letting the plants grow. And I also think I talk too much when I teach. But then I do a lot of online teaching, and I always feel that it's a bit, it's almost unavoidable, because playing together online, it's the one big disadvantage of teaching shakuhachi, I find, as much as possible.
The way I do it is, I play online with my students all the time.
Yeah. You can mute one side. Yes.
I just tell them to mute themselves.
Yes, yeah.
And so from the student's point of view, it's the same. We're playing together.
Yeah.
Then I have to get them to play it for me. So it takes longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit different. It's not as good as being, but we can still play together. So there's really still no excuse to talk too much.
Fair point. I do like that as well, to play together in this way. But what's missing is that I don't hear the student play in that context. And then that, anyway, but still very grateful for all.
I think it's more important. I think it's more important for the student to play a lot.
Probably you're right.
Whether you get it or not, the more you play, the better you're going to become.
Yes.
This is do as I say, not as I do. Mm-hmm. So, don't watch any of my lessons, but ideally, the student plays a lot in the lesson, because that's how the student's going to learn. By playing, and particularly playing in front of a teacher, which is like a surrogate audience. You're giving the student a stage from which to perform. Mm-hmm. And so playing at a lesson, during a lesson, is like learning how to perform. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the, perhaps the best way to learn. And then I can say, look, that's not how it goes. Listen, and then maybe that's all I need to say. However, there's still time. I've got a lesson later on I can put into practice when I'm preaching now.
Yes. Very good point. Okay. Before I go down that rabbit hole, continuing on this topic of Chikuho and Yokoyama. So, at some point, you decided you wanted to learn from Yokoyama. Was that when you already had your Dai Shihan from Chikuho, or was that before that point?
Deciding that I wanted to learn from Yokoyama was before that point.
Okay.
Beginning to study with Yokoyama was long after that.
Okay. And what was it? Sorry.
In a sense, it was more of a again, the path of least resistance is often the path, well, it's almost always the path I have taken in my life. And Sakai Chikuho was, in retrospect, probably a manic depressant.
Okay.
And for the 4 or 5 years that I had lessons with him, a lot, he was just in this total manic stage.
Okay.
And having never seen the depressive stage, I and everyone around him just thought, well, this guy is just so full of energy. It's just amazing. He is just, it's just mind-boggling. The energy and the enthusiasm. And I had the benefit of that. I had the best of his years, you could say.
Okay.
In many ways. And then things started kind of getting wobbly and pear-shaped. And back then, this whole idea of mental illness was very, particularly in Japan, still is, but even here in the West, very different. And one big difference is the drugs weren't as good, if there were any at all.
Yeah.
And anyway, Sakai Chikuho eventually became very ill and not functioning, and then he finally died.
Okay.
So, however, he knew that already that I wanted to study with Yokoyama, and he was fine with that.
Okay.
But I didn't actually start officially, I didn't become an official student of Yokoyama until after Sakai, maybe even after he died.
Okay.
Certainly after he was no longer teaching.
Oh, okay.
And so that worked out, for me, that worked out okay.
Yeah. And you still felt the urge to learn more, even though, we briefly touched on this, right? Dai Shihan, whatever it means, right? It definitely is an indication of a certain level of certain accomplishment, competence, but you still felt you needed to, or you wanted to learn more from Yokoyama.
When you asked me that question, I think I had to kind of do a double take, like, what the hell are you talking about? The Dai Shihan license has absolutely nothing, zero, to do with what I know and what I want to know. It's the whole thing, the more you know you don't know. But particularly Yokoyama had pieces, so that's repertoire, but he also had style, he had technique, he had musicality, he had personality that I wanted. Nothing to do with what I learned from Sakai Chikuho. Yeah, no, absolutely not. That thought never occurred to me.
Okay.
And back then, that whole Dai Shihan thing, I just thought, well, that's what you got. I didn't have to work for it. Yeah, I practiced in the beginning. I was practicing on average 6 to 8 hours a day. And I could do that because I could support myself by working a fraction, tiny bit of my time, and I could earn a living. I chose to spend all of my money playing shakuhachi. In other words, earn as little as I possibly could to survive and spend all of my time and the rest of my money on shakuhachi. So that was my choice. However, it was an easy choice. So in other words, becoming a Dai Shihan for me was ducksuit. It was just, it was easy. It wasn't anything that I considered to be proud of. And I didn't even realize I was the first at the time. I had no idea. And I didn't realize that the majority of the shakuhachi lineages, particularly the overwhelming majority outside of the Kansai area, where we talked about these two kind of big streams, they don't even have Dai Shihan. So you've got all these guys in the Kinko lineage that got Shihans that deserve Dai Shihans, that play better than me, that know more than me. But that lineage just doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So, this whole thing about Dai Shihan stuff, it's great. It sells tickets. I admit I have used it for 50 years or however long it's been since I got my Dai Shihan. And in a way, it's unfortunate that you see two people's names, you have no idea. One is grandmaster, one's master. Who do you think is going to be better? You just know that. I have heard so many Dai Shihan grandmaster shakuhachi players that can't play with beans.
Yeah.
You know, they just went through the process. They did it. You know, these things are not accredited. It's not like university. And you can still even get, you know, a PhD from one university. Even another accredited university is very different.
Yes.
People know that. And in the shakuhachi world, they know that. But 99% of the listeners, particularly in the West, or the people that come and, you know, buy shakuhachi concert tickets or seek out teachers, they don't know that. They don't know that, you know, Harvard or Princeton or Yale, you know, might be better than Oklahoma Baptist University, which in many other ways might be better than I'm not valuing, you know, they're different, in other words. They're different. People know those differences, typically, when they're looking at graduates. You know, you graduate from University of Edinburgh, great. You know, you graduate from Norwich University, great, different. So that you just know it's not even better or worse, they're nuanced, you know? So that's my take on this Dai Shihan thing. So absolutely, I'm just going to study with Yokoyama. Absolutely.
Okay. It's very nice that you're so emphatic about this, because it's actually one of the points that I immediately picked up on when I got in touch with this KSK world, because one of the first things that, or one of the first stories I heard about Yokoyama sensei was that he just didn't like this iemoto system anyway, he didn't like, but also the Shihan thing, because from how I heard it, he said it just it has nothing to do with how well a person can play, right? It's more like how long you've been in the game, and if you then get to the point that you learned all the pieces, and then sort of you get the paper, but having the paper doesn't really say anything about how good the music is that you can make,
or how good the teacher is. However, here's another food for thought. The iemoto system, one could argue, and I'll make that argument now, might be the best system to create the best shakuhachi player.
Okay.
So if I was God, right, and I wanted to create the best shakuhachi player, what would I do? I would create an environment in which someone has got the inclination, the talent, to the potential to become a great shakuhachi player. Not much, but part of that's to do with genes. So I would pick this person to be born within a musical family, ideally a shakuhachi family. Ideally a shakuhachi family in which the shakuhachi players in that family are already really good. Ideally in a family that the baby is already hearing shakuhachi before she or he is even born. And then the kid's born. And then, ideally, that kid would just hear shakuhachi all day long. It would just in there, right? And then, as the child gets older, it's just absolutely a given. Both the child and the siblings and everybody knows that this kid is going to become a shakuhachi player. He has to take lessons. It's more important for him to practice shakuhachi than to go out and play football. It just happens. And then as he gets better, he gets to play with and associate the best shakuhachi players in the world. His teachers are the best shakuhachi players in the world. He actually gets to perform with these best shakuhachi players in the world, even though he's not really good enough. But because of his status and because of who he is and his connections with his family, it's like if you're born into a family of very wealthy billionaires, it's more likely that you're going to become a billionaire than someone not. It's not impossible, but it's more likely. And with the shakuhachi player, the person I'm talking about is a person that was born, that was a child of an iemoto. Got all the perks. Doesn't have to worry about money, doesn't have to worry about work, gets to play with, gets to listen to, gets to hang out with all the best players, not only shakuhachi players, but other musicians, koto shamisen musicians traditionally, but even, symphony orchestra, the top soloists in the world. That's who this person gets to hang out with. It doesn't happen every time, as evidenced by you got a lot of sons of iemotos that can't play worth shit either.
Yeah.
However, in an ideal situation, given everything else being equal, that's how you're going to get a really top-notch shakuhachi player. So, I don't know.
It's a point well made. I mean, I think the Western perspective probably almost automatically is, right? This poor child, it doesn't have a choice, right? Now it has to become a shakuhachi player if he or she wants or not, right? I mean, there is this other side to it as well. But you already said this as well, right? It doesn't guarantee that you get a good shakuhachi player in the system. And then because the system is the system, you sort of end up with the dysfunctions as well as the things that function well in the systems. So.
But I did say that this child would inherit the same attributes,
yes.
The motivation, the inclination,
yes.
the potential, that the child wants to be a shakuhachi player. His dad, it's like so many children, they want to be what their dads are.
Yeah, that's right.
As soon as they see, I want to do that. That's what my dad's doing. Look how much fun he's having.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's, whatever. There's no, one can't tell.
No, of course.
One can't tell.
No, of course.
In other words, it's more complex than it sounds. Yeah, you got it.
No, of course.
Everything's gray. You can't say this is right, that's wrong.
And I mean, just very obviously, if the system wouldn't work in a way, it wouldn't be used, right? And in Japan, this iemoto system has survived for a very long time. So in a certain way, it just has to work because otherwise people wouldn't be doing it. But I just wanted to quickly, maybe as a short takeaway from this, to get to this just superficial contradiction that so you have this title from one lineage, but you're very well known as being a student of Yokoyama sensei's, and I think somewhere I heard that you even probably think of him as your main teacher, or at least have more influence even from Yokoyama than from Chikuho. But it's not reflected in the title, right? So, and on the surface, I think it's a certain, or it can be construed as a contradiction or as something that doesn't line up. But I think after our conversation, maybe this makes it a bit clearer where how the situation arose and why there is no need to get a second license or something like that. Would you agree?
There was I went through a bit of time fairly recently where I felt really I should just totally renounce my Dai Shihan.
Okay.
And I can't take it off the internet now. It's out there. I can't erase the past.
Yeah.
I can go forward. From today, I never use it. From today, none of my own publicity materials, my website, none of that mentions it. Nothing. And I still think, yeah, that's great. I'll probably start doing that.
Okay.
It'll be difficult because there's so much out there. But
yeah.
But on the other hand, as someone pointed out, I earned that license. I didn't ask for it. I did what was required of me, and the steps, because it was organized. It wasn't just a one-man show where, the person just writes it out. Here you go. I had to do this all-day examination just as they get the Shihan with, a board of examiners and these five-part. Yeah, I did that. And so it is me. So I shouldn't be ashamed of it. That's what it is. And I can't help or do anything about what I think is too bad, shade, that the other lineages don't have this Dai Shihan.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about that.
No, of course.
So all I can do is, when asked, explain, it's no big deal. And in any case, this is what people forget. It should be focusing on how well you're teaching, not how well you're performing. Because that's what it means. Shihan means teacher.
Yes.
Teacher's license. It doesn't mean performing license.
Yeah.
It doesn't say how good you are. It's a teacher. So how good of a teacher are you? What are you teaching? And for me, the teacher definition is greater than just giving lessons. how much are you contributing?
Yes.
How much are you giving to the shakuhachi tradition as a whole, to your own students in particular, to your lineage also, generally speaking?
Yeah.
So it's about giving. It's not about receiving accolades or better gigs or anything like that.
Yes.
It's actually, this is the big thing. And if you don't feel this, you don't deserve it. If I don't feel this, I don't deserve either Shihan or Dai Shihan. It is more a responsibility than anything else.
Yes.
It is a weight.
Yes.
It is something, okay, now I have to live up to this. That's, I think, is very, very important.
Yes. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree to all what you said. So it's very nice and very nicely put, I think. And I think on your website at some point you also say that only by teaching and by giving the piece away, by handing it on to the next generation, you really understand the piece and the process and what it's about. And so again, it's a sentiment I personally share very much as well. So it's very nice of you to, very nice to, again, hear you talk about this very emphatically. So because I agree with you 100%.
Now, to further that and to tie it back with what you're talking about, even though you had the Dai Shihan, you still wanted to learn more from Yokoyama.
Yeah.
The giving, which is what the Shihan thing is about, is only half of the coin. You can't give unless you receive. You can't receive unless you give. It's both. You can't cut a coin in half and only have the heads.
Yeah.
It's no longer a coin.
Yeah.
It's only half a coin.
Yeah.
If the coin is the giving and receiving, you got to have both. And so in order to reach my potential as a teacher, I have to continue to be a student. I have to continue to receive. And who do I receive from? I learn as much from my students as anybody.
Yes.
And I certainly can learn from colleagues of mine. I can learn from listening to other people, whatever level they're on. I have to remain in that student sort of frame of mind. Otherwise it's like I'm dead. In order to continue to grow, I have to receive. I have to be nurtured. I have to be nurtured.
Yeah.
In order to produce fruit, I need that.
Yes. Again, a very nice point. When I talked with Katsuya Sakai sensei in the interview, he said that one of the core ideas of starting the KSK for Yokoyama sensei was to foster this interchange. So everybody was welcome to learn with him, and he was very happy to teach everybody, not just people sort of in his lineage or the people who signed up to be his students on a more permanent basis. And again, it's an attitude that I latched onto very early on when I started playing this whole process. But more
importantly, sorry to interrupt. More importantly, Katsuya Sakai-san is also still open to learning. Yes. He's constantly learning.
Yes.
He's not like, okay, we got this from Yokoyama. This is it. This is the magic box. But we share it with everybody because we're very open. No, it's not that. This is what we got from Yokoyama. Let's keep adding to it. Yes. Yokoyama would agree with that as well.
Yes. So since we're mentioning the KSK again, can you maybe explain a bit what the difference is between the KSK and Chikushinkai? So KSK is more open, just a research institute, and Chikushinkai is more like Yokoyama lineage. Because so the reason why I'm asking this question is that the terms don't seem to be interchangeable. So sometimes there is a bit of pushback when in the context of KSK this is called Chikushinkai or something like that. And I don't have enough experience. I don't know enough about this whole world, these cultural concepts. So this is just maybe not an ignorant, but a very open question. So what is the difference?
Well, you're asking the wrong person. The whole KSK thing happened, in a sense, after I had already I was still taking lessons, but very sporadically.
Okay.
By 1994, when the KSK idea, well, I mean, the idea was there long before that, but before it actually eventuated. And calling anything KSK, for me, is a very new thing. It's nothing I've ever done. I'm not comfortable with saying these are KSK pieces because I never thought of them.
Okay.
They're just pieces that I learned from Yokoyama. Mm-hmm. Now, the Chikushinkai is more like any lineage, iemoto system. And it was different, though, because there wasn't really an iemoto. It was an organization that was more... It included, for example, Yokoyama's father.
Okay.
And his students, many of whom went over to Yokoyama, too. Mm-hmm. So it was more of a traditional sort of organization, not necessarily a lineage, but an organization.
Okay.
And the KSK was Yokoyama's idea. Mm-hmm. And it was, by definition, it was international, because KSK, Kokusai, the very first K means international. Mm-hmm. Kokusai shakuhachi Kenshukan. And the whole idea with research, well, what do you mean by research? What's that? Who's researching what? And coming again, I do have another hat, and that's the ethnomusicology hat, and that is research. That's the study of. That's not nothing to do with music. It's the study of music. It's theology, you know. So that's research. So what are they researching? Well, I don't know. So I've never been. It's an issue that it doesn't really affect me or bother me. Some people before the KSK became used would call these pieces dokyoku, being i.e. pieces from watatsubi do. Yeah. And that's problematic too. So I tend to think, well, I actually like KSK better than dokyoku. Yeah, so it's problematic. And the problem was, in fact, in a sense, part of not the solution, but part of the attraction. Yokoyama did not leave he didn't hand over, the reins.
Yes.
He didn't anoint someone.
That's right, yes.
And you almost have to. You have to. Mm-hmm. He did kind of, almost by default, not necessarily chose, but they were chosen. They chose themselves. Yes. A group of his students who took over. Mm-hmm. But they're a group. And the irony is, by definition, being his top students also didn't like the idea of one authority.
Very true.
And it's difficult to work, without someone taking the authority.
In charge, yeah.
So maybe what attracted so many people to Yokoyama and continues to attract people to KSK is the seed of the KSK's demise. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know that. So it's great, and I think it's great that you're asking these questions, and I hope that someone comes up and says, "Well, okay, let's figure this out." I should sit down with the fellows in Japan, and we should probably start thinking about this, because we're all getting old too. Who's next? I've asked them who's next, and they kind of suck their teeth and say, "I'm not sure." It's a problem.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. On the other hand, I don't know. Something will spontaneously happen. If it's meant to happen, it'll happen. Yeah. It's like the music of Bach. Mm-hmm. There are Bach societies now, but he didn't start them.
No,
his sons didn't start them.
Yeah.
In fact, his whole music disappeared until, was it Mendelssohn or somebody kind of helped get it going again. Yeah. If something's really worthwhile continuing, it will continue, maybe.
Yes. Okay. So Let's change gears a bit. A bit more of a personal question series. So you've been playing shakuhachi for over 50 years. Why are you still playing after all these years? And why are you still so enthusiastic about shakuhachi? Can you say, or does it just happen?
That's an excellent question. The obvious answer is why do I play shakuhachi is because that's what I do. I obviously, in the beginning, I was obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. That's all I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I wanted to eat too. I wanted to socialize a little bit. But mainly, I just wanted to play shakuhachi. That's the number one thing I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to become a good shakuhachi player. I wanted to become as best as I could. And then what else happened is, I often think that I sometimes wish that I was more kind of autistic in that I was so antisocial. All I did was play shakuhachi. I'd be a better shakuhachi player now, but maybe not. Having a family and having children and grandkids, surely that affects my playing. And what I lose in practice time and technique, I probably gain in so many other ways. So I don't really regret that. There was in 2010, I was hit by a car while walking down a footpath, and I nearly lost my leg, and I was in the hospital for 2 months. I had 7 operations, a lot of burns, and for 6 months, I didn't play shakuhachi. And it's interesting, it's just getting to your question, I never wanted to. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to do more than anything was run again.
Okay.
That was far more important to me than playing shakuhachi. Mm. And I remember a shakuhachi maker and player, his name is Miura Taro.
Okay.
Taro. And he had friends in Australia. He's Japanese. And I had already, this is like 4 months after my accident. And I couldn't go home yet because I couldn't climb the stairs to our apartment. We didn't have an elevator. I couldn't walk there. So I'm in our daughter's ground floor apartment. And he emailed me, said, I'm in town, I want to visit you. And I said, no, I don't want to see you. And he said, well, I'm here, and I want to show you. Anyway, he kept bugging me. And I was so tired and uninterested at that point. I just thought, yeah, let him come. Okay. And I'll just sit there. He can do his thing and he can leave. And it's more, I don't even want to email him anymore to say no. I didn't have the energy to even say no. I wasn't interested. Anyway, he came, and he had one of these shakuhachi that was made from back then, 100 years ago. A lot of the houses were traditional houses there was no chimney. There was just the hearth in the middle, and the smoke would blacken over 100 years the bamboo rafters, and then the buildings would be torn down and rebuilt. And so, every 100, 150 years, you get these smoke bamboo from the old houses. That's how that was made. And there are very, very few, as you can imagine, because one, they don't make these houses anymore. And two, they preserve. Anyway, he had a shakuhachi made from a tradition. Nowadays they can smoke them. They put them in a smoker and they smoke them. He had one that was traditionally, from one of these bamboo things in the rafters, shakuhachi with him. And he said, that's what he wanted to show me. And I wasn't interested. It looked nice. But he said, come on, you got to play it. And so really just to get him out of my hair. Okay. Because all my energy was to get well. Going to physiotherapy 3 times a week. I do everything the physio told me to do and more. I want to get stronger. I wanted to learn to walk without crutches. I wanted to learn to walk. I wanted to then eventually run. I want to do that. Anyway, get this flute. And I played it. Bingo, there it is again.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Okay.
That's what I do. I think in retrospect, my subconscious may get well first, and the rest will take care of itself. Just sort yourself out physically first, and then the rest will take care of itself. And I haven't told Taro-san, Mr. Miura yet. I must email him that, it's thanks to him, one could say, probably it would eventually happen anyway.
Okay.
But his handing me that shakuhachi and me just wanting to get rid of it and playing it is what sparked it. So with that experience, how can I answer you? What would be the answer? Why do I play shakuhachi? I don't know, mate. I really don't know. Yeah, I get great pleasure out of playing. I get good pleasure playing for myself. I get pleasure playing for others. I get pleasure teaching about it. I get pleasure talking about it. I get pleasure looking at them. I get pleasure seeing them made. I don't get pleasure making them because I'm too frustrated making them. I don't have the patience to make them. But I like talking about making. I like everything about them.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know why.
It's a great answer because it probably would be. I mean, apart from your accident, it probably would be very similar to what I would say because I have no idea why I do it. I just do it and it's fun, but there's no. Sometimes I'm bugged by sort of trying to analyze what is it about this activity or this thing that I find so appealing, and I just don't know. I just do it.
Well, I can tell you that. I can tell you why it's appealing. It's appealing because the thing works. It's frustrating. It's hard in the beginning. You get great satisfaction just making a sound. You don't get that same satisfaction as the piano. You hit the key and it happens. There's no satisfaction in that. With the shakuhachi, you get satisfaction from the word from the very beginning. And then it's that combination of frustration and satisfaction. Satisfying the frustration, the rewards from trying something that is hard. It's not so rewarding doing something that's easy.
That's true.
And then it's so beautiful. And it uses your breath. And anything that uses your breath is great. You get a lot of rewards from that. You get a lot of physical rewards. You got mental and emotional rewards. Tying your breath with an activity.
Yes.
The sound is great. It's that perfect combination between the exotic and the familiar that attracts all of us. It's different enough. It's not just your standard guitar that it attracts a lot of us, but it's still it's a flute. It's not totally 100%. Strange and weird. It's still, fluty sounds are still, they're not like some vocal techniques. And it's got this really, really cool Zen Buddhist sort of background to it.
Yes.
So that people assume that if you can play this instrument, you've got things figured out that maybe they don't, about life.
Yes.
Maybe you've got something. There's this the whole Zen thing is just shrouded in mystery and paradoxes and contradictions and how does that work and it's so easy to get this impression that there must be something there. I don't have it. Maybe you have it. Wow. Even if I can't get it, you have it. Oh, wow, my goodness. And maybe if I can learn from you, maybe I can get it too. There's that. You don't get that. You go to a guitar teacher. There's not that. So there's a whole lot of reasons. And it's bamboo. It's easy to carry around. It's the perfect, instrument of the times. It's ecologically friendly.
Yeah.
The guy that made my flutes, he two of the flutes I'm carrying, some of the flutes I have, he says, what's neat about this instrument is that everything that comes in and everything that goes out of my workshop, I can put on my compost heap. You can't say that with a clarinet or a saxophone or a piano or other instruments. So there's so many benefits or reasons why all of us shakuhachi players are so attracted to the instrument. It's very addictive. All music can be addictive. Any musical instrument can be addictive. That's why people start playing and they they're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what instrument, but in particular the shakuhachi. Why it? Why not the koto? Why not the shamisen? Yeah, it addicts some people, but far fewer people. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that.
Mm-hmm. All very good points. All very good points. For me, it's a bit more peripheral. These reasons. I shared this. I share that, but sort of understanding this inner drive, what it is. I mean, of course, those are all nice perks that you described. But anyway, I probably won't find out until.
But
maybe never.
That's something you should ask yourself. You should continue to inquire, to think about that.
Yeah, but it's more about
as long as
the
it
way
bothers
rather
you.
than the answer.
Yeah, no, but if it bothers you, there's an expression. It's like my grandmother said that if you can't stop thinking about it, you can't stop working toward it or fighting for it or striving for it. So if it's still in your mind, you got to keep. See, I have an issue. It doesn't bother me. I don't care.
No, it's more often.
I don't ask that question to me. I wouldn't ask that question to anyone else. I wouldn't say, "Why are you doing shakuhachi?" From my point of view, it's like, of course you're going to do shakuhachi. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So I mean, just to clarify, it's more just an intellectual curiosity that I wonder why is it, but I'm very content in just doing it. So yeah.
But I would suggest that you should. You should scratch that intellectual, curiosity. You should, solve it.
Maybe there's something in there. Yeah, exactly.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so after all these years, again, you said you have a competitive streak as well. But earlier you mentioned also. You decided, I want to get really good at playing shakuhachi. That sounds a bit like a goal. So do you have a goal in terms of shakuhachi playing? Is there something you want to achieve, or are you just happy doing it?
One of the things that Yokoyama sensei told me more than once is that goals are important. Mm-hmm. And since then I've learned just from really, Western music pedagogy that goals are very important. You got to have weekly goals, daily. You got to have micro goals, mini goals, midi goals, big goals, great goals, grand goals. And you got to. Goals are important. Mm-hmm. What are you going to achieve today? What are you going to achieve this week? What are you going to achieve this year? Where do you want to be in 10 years' time? And you have to think about these things. Yokoyama says, okay, you got the top one. If it's a pyramid, and you can, it's like the Sierpinski's triangle in two dimensions. You can have it 3 as well. So each triangle it's like a fractal. Mm-hmm. The whole triangle is in every triangle, with all the little triangles that become big. Anyway, what's at the very, very top? The very, very top is your lifetime goal. Your lifetime goal, says Yokoyama, should be impossible. Mm-hmm. Okay. What? Your most important goal should be impossible to achieve.
Okay.
How can that be? If your lifetime goal is achievable and you achieve it, what are you going to do? Commit suicide? This is why Olympic gold medalists often do have problems. That was their lifetime goal. They achieved it. There's no other reason to live now. Mm-hmm. There are more, so that's kind of the logic behind it, but there's a lot of benefits for having an unachievable goal because you're already striving for it. And there's little goals along the way that you have to create to reach the top goal. The top goal is, in a sense, your North Star, right? It's the star that the 3 kings followed. Mm-hmm. It's the signal. You may not ever reach it. It may be always on the other side of the horizon, but it directs you. It tells you what to do today. What can I do today that will most likely get me 1 foot closer to my goal, which is 2,000 miles away? Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important. And it's important that it's always just beyond reach because you're always trying to get to it. So that's another reason why it's very important. Another advantage of having an impossible goal as your lifetime goal is that, it's impossible. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you're never going to be disappointed. Don't ever be disappointed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You can't be.
You can't reach it, yeah.
If you had a goal that's possible, and you know it's possible, there's a disappointment, a frustration. Mm-hmm. A lifetime goal, no. So it's almost becomes, in a sense, it becomes more light on your shoulders. It becomes more of a game. This is the game I'm going to play until I die. And I will die before I reach that goal. By definition, I will. But I'm going to play the game as best I can until I do die. So the goal is not going to stop me. Death is going to stop me. I can't help that. That's just the way it is. But I can continue to strive toward my goal. That I can choose to do. Even on my deathbed, I can still continue to try to do that. So that's why lifetime goals are so important. Yeah, and you have to think about it. Choose it well. You have to think, now, is this really impossible? Okay, and maybe you can have more than one lifetime goal. So what's my lifetime goal? My lifetime goal is to be, the best person I can be. My secondary lifetime goal, because what the hell is that? What do you mean by best? Okay, my lifetime goal, I want to be the best shakuhachi player in the world. That by definition is impossible because what does that mean? It's not like a swimming contest where you touch the end of the board and it's you're measured in hundredths of seconds. You can't please all the people all the time. One person may think, he's a great player, but I don't like the music he plays. I would prefer to listen to this music. I like this guy better. Right? How can I possibly be the best shakuhachi player ever? Well, I can, for example, continue to learn. Mm-hmm. I have to. If that's my goal, I have to learn, regardless of what I was saying about, previously, about being open and all that and giving and receiving and all that stuff with the teacher business, teacher-student stuff. It's part of my goal. It's very, very selfish. I just want to attain my goal. I don't care about you. I want to get my goal. And so I want to continue to learn. I still want to learn. What do I want to learn? I want to learn everything. That's impossible. Okay. So you got to try. That piece is impossible. I can't play that piece. I'm going to try. I don't have time to play all those pieces. Well, I'm going to try. You can't. I'm just going to try. Well, you can't. Well, I'm going to try to learn the pieces I have. Well, you can't. You can't even learn new pieces. You can't even continue to play the pieces you've learned to the best you know you can play them. When's the last time you've played a piece I can't surpass that? Never. Yeah. So how can you expect to learn other new pieces that are all out there? Well, I'm going to try. So this is my lifetime goal. And this is, on the one hand, it informs me. So I'm very comfortable with what I do. What happens when I wake up? I don't feel like it. I don't want to learn anything else. I want to get pissed drunk. I know that's bad for me. What do I do then? I want to eat that fifth donut. What do I do there? Well, I don't know. I'm not perfect. It's a goal, but I can't run toward a goal all the time. Sometimes I got to walk. Sometimes I got to stumble. Yeah. Sometimes I trip over rocks. Sometimes I fall down. Sometimes I get hit by a car, end up in hospital for 2 months. Life happens. So you got the goal and it's there, and I'm obsessed in one way with it, but I'm very comfortable with it being there because I'm never going to reach it anyway. I don't have to work on it today. Right. I can take my time. I can do something else today. Yeah. But if there's a choice and I feel like it, my own humanly instincts, for example, my desire for sugar, salt, and fat is not so great that I just have to have the donut and I can actually make that decision, well, then I will be guided by my goal. Maybe that donut's not so good. Maybe I should have this other thing that's, still tastes good, but will make me feel better so that maybe tomorrow I will practice more.
Okay. But you probably can't really say why that is still your life's ambition. I mean, linking back to what we just talked about, right? It's
No, I can say it is because I chose that.
Okay.
I chose that. When Yokoyama asked me he didn't ask me what it was. He never asked. Mm-hmm. He says one should have a lifetime goal, and it should be an impossible one. And I thought about it for a long time.
Okay.
And of course, at that period of time, I was still totally 100%. I already started to have a family, but I was still pretty obsessed with shakuhachi, so it was pretty an easy option. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Perhaps to the detriment of my partner and children. My number one goal wasn't to be the best father, and maybe it was the wrong choice. Maybe I should have chosen to be, the best friend, the best father, the best partner, the best whatever, the best. My goal is to give my entire life to help others. Mm-hmm. I chose my goal was very selfish. That's just what I chose. Yeah. And it turns out that the goal actually helps me become a good father and a good partner, and helps me be a good member of my society and culture. Mm-hmm. That wasn't my motivation, though. Mm-hmm. It's a very selfish motivation.
Yeah. But I mean, you're not just receiving, you're giving us a lot as well in this role. So I think, but I take your point.
Yeah, but you could say I'm only giving because I want to receive. I just figured out the giving receiving thing, and
very
here's the deal with giving and receiving. It's so much easier to give. It's impossible to kind of force the receiving. Mm-hmm. I want this. I want to receive it. No. That's borderline taking now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right.
So I know I want that. How do I get it? Well, I just keep giving. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm still not getting it. What's the problem? Well, maybe that just wasn't on the cards. Forget it. Don't worry about that. It's so easy. It's so easy to give. Mm. It's much easier. Because you have control of the giving. You don't have control of the receiving.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, again, I completely agree. So we talked, I think in the first part a bit about how to make a living of being a shakuhachi, baka, whatever. Was there one of your goals getting to the point where you can live off it, or were you quite happy? Because I think it was in the context when you said I started this academic career because, well, one thing Yokoyama said I should because it's good for shakuhachi as well, but it's also a good way to just make a living. Is that sort of still your setup, or was there a goal?
I don't think I said in the beginning when I was talking about the academic thing that I don't think I said it was a good way to make a living. It was a good way to spread shakuhachi to the West. It was a good way to be accepted in the West. Mm-hmm. So right. My teacher said this, not me. No, I've never thought about making a living. It's just happened.
Okay.
And I've been very fortunate. I've become more refined at it, mm-hmm. And I realize quite belatedly that it's important. But it's just something I've never concerned myself with.
Okay.
When I needed money, I would go and work. Mm-hmm. I was after the taiko group. After that, with Patricia, we worked in a health resort. I taught yoga, and I was helped the head gardener. Mm-hmm. I was gardening. When we moved to Hawaii, I gardened again, did landscape gardening, Then I worked. I was ironically, I was. I first just got in as on the bottom level, but eventually became the day manager of a Japanese steakhouse.
Okay.
As a vegetarian.
Ironic.
It was ironic. Yeah, the chefs loved it. They loved it. Say, can we make you a really nice steak today? Piss off, mate. But anyway, I did what I needed to do, and it didn't bother me. Okay. I never thought, oh, I'm not. I was just I'm very fortunate. I've always been very fortunate. Mm-hmm. Things have come my way.
Okay.
I could analyze that. I've been open to things. I've one says that we have a number of opportunities. We always have opportunities, and those of us that knock on the most doors kind of get the best opportunities. And it seems like we have more opportunities than other people. I don't know if that's true. I don't know, because I can't be someone else. I can't rewind to things. Mm-hmm. But I've never done. I've never thought of it that way.
Okay.
It's just one thing has led to the other.
Okay. That is, as you already said, that's a very fortunate path to take, yes.
It is, and so when people ask me, well, how do you do it? Can you offer me any advice? I'm really stymied. I think, though, I can say that ultimately your motivation has to be you got to please yourself. You're playing for yourself. So when I say please yourself, you've got to, first and foremost, if you want to make a living being a musician, you've got to please your number one audience, and that's yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you can please your number one audience, because you know the mistakes. If you don't know when you're making mistakes, well, you're not there yet. You got to learn to be a good musician. To be a good musician is to immediately hear your mistakes and that they hurt. You can't allow them to exist. Mm-hmm. You want to get rid of all the mistakes you hear. Mm-hmm. You have to do that. And you hear them. You hear them. You hear them. You know that. You are your harshest critic. You have to be your harshest critic. And yet, eventually you start thinking, hey, that sounds pretty good. And people come to you and they say, well, it was outstanding. That's wonderful. And you say, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. And you're thinking, yeah, but you just don't hear it correctly.
Yes,
you don't know. But yeah, it was pretty good. No, I agree. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, it was all right. Yeah, it affects you. Yeah, it makes you cry or it makes you happy. Your emotions were affected by that music, but it wasn't as good as it could be. It still wasn't that good.
Yes.
So I think if you reach that point, your audience, what do you call it? Attracting an audience will be much easier. Mm-hmm. So it's a quandary. You got to make a living on the one hand, and on the other hand, you want to please that number one critic. And both avenues take more time than you have in a 24-hour day. What are you going to do? Yeah. You got to compromise.
Yeah.
How do you compromise? Well, that's up to you. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very tricky. Also a very common story for any musician, as you already said as well, yes. Again, I'm very conscious of the time. I want to touch on one more bigger topic, and that's shakuhachi and how to play. Or how to learn to play shakuhachi. So practice, of course, to learn play shakuhachi, you have to practice. So how do you practice? Do you have a routine? Do you what works best? So Watatsumi is always cited as having said, play 10 minutes of ubuki every day, and sort of this has become one of the staples or of the common answers when people ask, what should I do to practice shakuhachi? So what's your take on this? How do you learn playing shakuhachi or being a shakuhachi player?
So are you asking for advice, or are you asking how I do it?
I think I would like to start. Yes, I think I would like to start with how you do it or how you did it, and then we maybe can come to the other half of the question.
Well, how I did it for the first, 4 or 5 years was just I played all day long. So, 10 minutes of robuki, like, what's that? Hadn't even started yet. How about an hour? Not just row, but everything. So that was, I don't expect people to be able to do that. Very few people have the inclination to practice 6 to 8 hours a day when they have the opportunity to do so. By the time one has the inclination to do so, there are all these other things, like life, that get in the way.
Yes.
Exactly. Playing 6 to 8 hours a day is not going to pay the rent, the mortgage or whatever. So that's not advice. I don't advise you to do that. I advise you to do that if you got the opportunity, if someone will support you, if you're still a student at home, or just at home. I mean, I wasn't even a student. I can't recreate that. In 1970, there were so few English teachers in Japan that I could make a living. By the end of it, I could earn enough and save money I worked 4.5 hours a week. And you can't do that. What jobs give you that? And because I was this half Chinese, half Caucasian, kind of Asian-looking person, but still slightly, Western Asian, which is what everyone gaga over in the 70s in Japan. Young male, I got these modeling jobs as a model. I got paid, $1,000 for a day. Back when a really good shakuhachi cost $300, $400. So it'd be like $10,000 a day. So I only had to work. Work was not an issue.
Wow.
I can't advise you to do what I did. I was lucky. So what do you do? I don't know. I don't know what you do. You have to compromise.
Okay.
And I think the struggle will make you. I don't know. Maybe it won't. Anyway, that's how I did it in the beginning. I didn't have to think about. So what I suggest my students is that more important than playing robuki for 10 minutes a day is playing your shakuhachi for 10 minutes a day. Now, it's easier to play robuki for 10 minutes than it is to play anything else. So if that's what gets you to play for 10 minutes, then do so. If you just can't stand playing robuki for even 10 minutes, which is nothing, it's really nothing, then do something else. If you can't play robuki for 10 minutes, if you get bored after only 10 minutes playing robuki, then maybe you shouldn't, you need to work on your ability to concentrate. You need to be able to do something longer than you have the capability of doing, because it doesn't take that long, that much effort to play row for 10 minutes. Maybe you need to join a group, and that'll help you. Do it with a group. That always helps. So, or do something. So, robuki 10 minutes a day is not as important as anything 10 minutes a day. Probably robuki is one of the best ways to do anything 10 minutes a day. So that's the most important thing. Pick up your flute every day. How much do you play every day? As much as you possibly can. Doesn't have to be in one bit. It can be in several bits. Think about it as much as you can.
Okay.
When you buy something new and it's still a novelty and you're obsessed with it, like a child gets a new bicycle.
It's easy.
Or I'm into fountain pens. When I get a new fountain pen, I can't help. I want to look at it. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I want to write with it. I think about it. I want to look it up. The more you do that with your shakuhachi, that's still practice. You want to hold it. You go home. You get out your flute. You're watching the news or watching telly or doing something. You got your flute in your hand because you're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
So but maybe you're not obsessed with it. Maybe it's a hobby. You just want to meditate with it, or you want to play music with it, or you want to just have fun with it. Okay, well, you at least set out a routine. The routine being, the number one routine being, don't go to bed without playing your shakuhachi at least for 30 seconds. Usually once you get it out of its bag or whatever, and it's easy. It's a bit like brushing your teeth. but do it far longer than you brush your teeth. Ideally 10 minutes, but 30 seconds better than nothing. Just don't go to sleep without picking up your flute. Make it part of your life. As long as you're playing shakuhachi, even for 30 seconds a day, you can legitimately call yourself a shakuhachi player. You may be the worst shakuhachi player in the world, can't even make a sound, but you are still a shakuhachi player. When you don't pick up your shakuhachi, that day you can't call yourself a shakuhachi player. You are not a shakuhachi player. You were, you might be, but you aren't now.
Yeah.
So at the very least, once a day, pick it up. And ideally more, more. How much more? I don't know, 30 minutes, an hour, doesn't matter. And some people, they play shakuhachi for an hour a day, they don't get any, they're terrible. They still can't play with beans. Other people, they know how to practice 20 minutes. They progress faster than an hour. Well, learn how to practice.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're getting yourself into doing this. Do what you can do.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't always remember that it's play. But you got to work at play as well. You still got to work at it. But it's still, don't, it's okay.
Yeah.
Except don't go to sleep. Don't go to bed without picking it up. At the very least, surely you can do that. You've invested even $100. You invested time with your teacher. At the very least, pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very nice take on it. When I'm asked the question, I usually say that playing shakuhachi is so what to practice is mainly practicing tone production, tone color, and pitch control. So these two things, just to give an idea of what to do. Because of course, picking up the shakuhachi and just playing around a bit. But then usually the next question I get is, well, what do I do, right? So I maybe have half an hour every day, or try to make half an hour every day, but what do I do? And then I try to give a bit more focus. And then I say, look, shakuhachi is about many things, of course, but these two things, okay? If you work on each of these two things in a practice session, then this is a good way to approach it, to make progress. Would you see it similarly, or is it just play?
I think what you're saying is great, except you're leaving out one of the most important things that so many people forget, is that music making requires listening.
Okay.
And we are lousy listeners.
That is very true.
So it's not good enough just working if you can't hear your mistakes. And guaranteed you're going to make mistakes. If you can't hear mistakes, it's not because they're not there. If you can't hear the faults that need to be improved, it's because you're not listening. So you have to listen. You have to listen to yourself. You listen to your playing. You have to listen to everybody else. There's one of the sponsors of the taiko group, Ondekoza, the precursor to Kodo, it was like Mikimoto pearls. I think it was a competitor. I'm not sure if it was Mikimoto, but it was cultured pearls. And we were taken to the pearl factory, and we were brought up to the place where they were sorting the pearls. And you have to do it with natural light, so it was great. They were in front of these big picture windows that went up to the ceilings above them and in front of them, looking out into the ocean. Great view, that's for sure. And they're sorting pearls. And then the manager explained how you train to be a pearl sorter.
Okay.
And the first thing they do, I'm not sure how you get past the initial choosing, application. But once you're accepted as a trainee, they sit you in front of a conveyor belt, and you have to watch pearls go by for, I don't know if it was 8 hours a day, but he used all day. You have to sit in front of a conveyor belt watching pearls all day long. And all day long, you would only see the best pearls. I noticed these pearls had already been sorted, and you're only looking at the best pearls. And then after a week or a fortnight, I don't know how long, one pearl would come through that wasn't perfect. And that was your test. And the good ones that were actually watching, it would be as if they had painted that pearl red. It's like, whoa, wait. It's like bing, 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 the alarms go. If they weren't paying attention, it would slip through. You have to consider the same thing with your music. Listen to the best. Okay, you don't know what the best is. Well, okay, listen to what you like the best. Listen to what other people say are the best. That guy's great. Okay, I'll give him I don't like what he's doing. Oh, well, why not? You still listen. Listen to people that are better than you. You want to be a good tennis player? Play with people that are better than you. You listen. Listen not only to yourself, listen to others. Listen to your teacher. Listen to the teacher that's within you. So again, it's have that beginner's mind where I know nothing. I don't know anything at all. Whatever you tell me, I'm going to listen to. In the beginning, that's very tiring, and that's why you can't practice for an hour very well, because I'm listening so well. As a beginner, beginners always, their mind goes, turns to jelly very quickly because they are concentrating better than the more advanced students. That's great, but we lose that ability as we get a little bit better. So, do what you said, those two things, making a sound, good tone, upper octave, lower octave, pitch, which is so important with shakuhachi. But there's more, but start with those things. But just working on them is no good. If you play the wrong thing 100 times, you just get doing the wrong thing. Well, it helps playing the wrong thing. You become very good at playing that. But if that's not what you want to be playing, how do you know what you want to be playing?
Listen, This is something that Kaki Sakai Sensei also, well, he doesn't drill, right? But what he told me many times. So one thing, record yourself and check, right? So just use your phone and listen back to yourself playing, because when you play yourself, you just don't hear it, but listen to it. And the second thing is that he very often told me about Yokoyama Sensei that he had said, more than half of the time of your practice should be spent listening to good music, and exactly as you say, not necessarily shakuhachi music, but good music. And this is my turn on, or this is my take on it, to learn how to listen actively, so that you can pick out things. And if you're getting a bit more experienced in shakuhachi, that you start to hear the difference between ha and ro, right? Or between ha and ri, right? So you can hear which fingering is used and these things, and then you can ask yourself, why in this context is it ha and not ri, right? And then you can sort of can take it from there. So. Again, a point very well made. So maybe I should expand my usual 2 points with this third one. It's very important. I completely agree. It's just that in this context of this question, I usually forget about it. But it's a very good point. I completely agree.
Well, people do forget. That you don't play music with your eyes.
Yeah. Just with your ears and a bit with your fingers. Good. So, we don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately. There are two questions I would like to ask. One is, it's also a question I get a lot. How about the aspect of physical fitness and playing shakuhachi or playing music? It's more, so I get it more in the context of playing taiko, where the connection is more obvious, right? And we talked a bit about this in the first interview, this long history of Ondekoza and Kodo still running a lot and playing taiko. So you like to run a lot. I'm not quite as enthusiastic about it, but I regularly run as well. Kaki Sakai Sensei likes to swim. On the other hand, this group, this generation of big shakuhachi players, so Yokoyama Sensei or Aoki Reibo or Yamamoto Hozan, apparently they were very heavy smokers, and so probably didn't have a very healthy lifestyle, and they were still great shakuhachi players. So is this fitness thing or this running thing, is it more a more modern lifestyle thing, or do you think there is sort of a certain connection between being able, or does it help with playing or making music or with making music? Let's just ask like that.
Okay, so Yokoyama's generation, Yamamoto Hoda and all of them, Aoki Reibo, almost all of them. Kawase wasn't a smoker, but almost all were. You know, that's what they did back then. They didn't have the knowledge of how smoking was harmful to you, and there wasn't even the same knowledge in terms of diet. On the other hand, back particularly when they were growing up, there wasn't such a thing as fast food and junk food. So by and large, food was good for you. The food that you ate was it was still healthy food. Yeah. We know more now, and you could say, well, they were great and they weren't healthy. Yeah, but think how much greater they would have been if they could have all lived 20 years longer, which they could have.
Yeah.
Yokoyama, he was about my age when he died. So that's not a reason not to be healthy. It's better to be healthy, even if it's not a physical activity, because mental activities still require part of your body to work, even if it's your brain. Your brain is not disconnected to your body. And we're learning about that now with this rise in various forms of dementia. The healthier you are, the healthier your brain is. The healthier you are, the better your memory is. The better you smell, the better your brain works. The healthier you are, the better you hear. Even when the hearing apparatus, in my case, my hearing apparatus is kind of not as great as it used to be, but your brain can make use of what signals it does receive better if it's healthy. And we all know it's not a secret what is how you maintain health. You eat well, you sleep well, and you exercise. How much of all that? Well, it's out there. You choose yourself. You decide yourself. There are all these different people saying different things, but it's basically you eat healthily, which involves a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. Maybe not all. You choose yourself. You exercise. Certainly, you don't need to run marathons, but you exercise. You sleep. How much do you sleep? Well, that depends. How much do you need? You have to figure that out yourself. Yeah. But absolutely, the healthier you are, the better a musician you will be. And the longer you'll live to improve yourself, assuming that you're never going to stop, assuming you never think, I've made it, I can cruise from here on, I've retired.
That's a very good take on it. I like that very much, yes. Okay.
3 hours later.
Sorry, there's still a very long list of questions that I have. So maybe just very quickly.
6 hours later.
No, okay. Sorry. This probably I will cut out. my
yeah, sure. We can always do it again. I'm happy to talk. I can talk forever with these things. If you have questions, I probably have answers. It may not be right. And here's the thing, Marcus. By my talking, it sounds like I know everything. These ideas are coming out because you're asking them. I don't have these ideas. I don't think about these things. And I think, wow, that's pretty cool. That's a great question. That's a great answer. I don't know where it came from, but that's a pretty good answer. I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you, so I really enjoy these sessions. Don't worry about not finishing your questions. As long as I don't die, in the next week, we can do some more.
Okay,
and it doesn't have to be entirely for your podcast. You see, you can cut and paste and just take the very best of the podcast. But if you got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That is great. Thank you very much. It's very, very generous.
Well, it's not really. I'm doing this selfishly. I wouldn't do this if I didn't want to do it.
It's again the teaching thing, right? So I the more I teach, the more I discover this as well. How much I don't know, what I understand when I actually have to, when I'm in the situation that I have to explain it, because maybe something that I just did automatically, and then I have to sort of think about how can I convey this what I'm doing, or is what I'm doing actually right, or is it the best way of doing it? And also, again, I completely agree. So so maybe we'll do another session. As I say, I still have a long list. But maybe to wrap up this, because probably so I would expect there probably will be a bit more time between before we talk again. So I think what I think a nice closing question is, we've talked about many things about in the course of these 3 hours, I think, that we've been talking, at least while being filmed, while being on the record, so to speak. So look, and we've looked back a lot onto your career and how everything developed, and where you came from, where you are, and all these things. Does anything stand out as a particular event or a particular accomplishment or insight? So in your biography, you say, for example, you played in the new millennium on the top of Sydney Opera House, and of course that's a very big event. Maybe it's not a very important event, maybe it is. Or you talk about some strange practice methods that you tried out, playing in ice rain until the icicles form, or standing under a waterfall in the tradition of the Konguso, so to speak, or I don't know. I don't know. Does anything come to mind that stands out?
Of my experiences.
Of your experiences, or what you learned, or where you are now.
Most of what are in my biography are in there because it has been suggested or determined that those things attract people.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily the outstanding events in my life.
Yes.
I can't say, no, I don't have any.
Okay.
I have so many.
Yeah.
I can't choose one.
Yeah.
Either this is kind of a cop-out question, which I think a lot of questions that kind of sound like Zen are. So, but at risk of sounding like I'm copping out of your question, I'm avoiding your question, is that I will say that, the most important experience for me, and if it isn't, I try to make it, and more often than not it is what I'm experiencing now.
Mm-hmm.
That's harder to think when I'm just washing dishes, or cleaning the toilets. But I still tell myself, mate, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
This is important. And when I have one of those peak experiences, like playing on top of the Opera House, which, by the way, was pretty cool.
It sounds fantastic, yeah.
If I have this habit of thinking about, wow, right now it's really cool, I'm more likely to be in the moment and enjoy those bits or experience those bits than not.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess ultimately, though, the really peak experiences, you're no longer thinking of them as an experience, you're just living them.
Mm-hmm.
You're so involved and engrossed with the situation. And that's true with music, your absolute best performances ever, you don't know what you're doing. And when it's over, it's like, wow, what was that?
Mm-hmm.
Totally, there wasn't you playing, and there wasn't the instrument, there, the music, and the audience, these separate entities. There was just the playing, there was just the music.
Yeah.
And there wasn't even you thinking, wow, this is really cool. That happens after.
Yeah.
So that's to me, when those things happen, that's a peak experience.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, being alert and aware that this is the best right now is the best answer I can give you.
I think it's a very, very good answer. I like that very much. So, and I think it's also a very good concluding word to what everything that we've talked about. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. So I'm sure once I start editing, the list will grow much, much longer again. The list of my questions will grow much longer again. So I hope we can continue this conversation at some point. But for now, again, thank you very much. Even though if it was a bit selfish of you to talk to me, but on this side, there was also a lot to be grateful for. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's good.